and thanks for joining the webinar on e-commerce. My name is Usman. I'm one of the research analysts here in our e-commerce insight team, and I'm joined by my colleague Claire, who's also a research analyst in our e-commerce team. Before we begin, just a few housekeeping rules. This webinar will be recorded and available on our portal later. You can submit questions throughout the webinar using if you scroll down, there's a question tool at the bottom that you can submit your questions. We'll do our best to go through them at the end of the presentation. And if you want to reach us after the webinar, here's the email, info@planetretail.net. With that, we're going to kickstart our presentation, the outline of the content we're looking at here. First, we're going to give some sort of situational analysis, some few data points, and just describe the landscape in general. And then we'll go into some of the drivers of change that's affecting e-commerce globally. And then we'll delve into some key e-commerce topics that's top of mind. And we would then conclude with some summaries and key takeaways. To start with, I just wanted to emphasize some few e-commerce numbers that some of us may be familiar with. The point being to use these numbers to tell you a story and ground our understanding of the e-commerce landscape, its current outlook, and its tremendous growth potential. And as we can see from the chart, store-based still accounts for the majority of e-commerce sales, especially in Western market. However, e-commerce would account for about 30% of global chain retail and drive more than half of chain retail sales growth through 2023. And also what we've seen, especially with online to offline, we also seen a lot of retailers increasingly connecting online and offline channels in often unique ways to provide similar shopping experience. So while e-commerce is deleveraging store base, we've seen some stores evolve, and we've seen that seamless shopping experience between online and store also growing. Moving on to the top, here's the top 10 e-commerce market in the world. No surprise with China and the US being the biggest e-commerce here. What's important to note is that many of the fastest growing e-commerce market, which includes China, India, Brazil, South Korea, are coming from emerging market, which are often mobile first markets and leapfrog the whole desktop. And unlike developed market, e-commerce is growing alongside chain retail and lacks the legacy of traditional stores that we have in markets like the UK and the US or in Germany, for instance. A big call out here is we expect India to overtake France as the 6th largest e-commerce market in the world within the next 5 years, given its massive population, but also as we've seen in the news in the last year or two, there's been increased investment from major global players like Amazon ramping up their investment in India. We've seen Walmart acquired Flipkart, and we've seen Alibaba also investing heavily in India. In each of these markets, competition is very concentrated among a very few players who control the majority of the market share. For instance, in the US, the e-commerce market is very dominated by Amazon, who controls about 40% or so of the share. And then in China, we see Alibaba and JD control up to 80% plus of the market share. And then again, looking at the top e-commerce players around the world, the big surprise on this list is Pinduoduo, which is a Chinese social commerce platform that leverages group buying in a viral way. They have grown, they just recently IPO in the US. They have grown tremendously over the past 3 years. They started around September of 2015. And are going to be among the top 5 biggest e-commerce players and expected to go the fastest through 2023. However, each of the bigger players like Alibaba, JD, and Amazon are all expected to grow at double digit, again, emphasizing the growth potential on each of these e-commerce market and how that's where most of the retail growth is going to be coming from. The story with Pinduoduo is a great story that shows that there's still room for niche players to be able to get into this market and be able to grow sales tremendously. And each of these sort of top players, especially the biggest ones like Alibaba, JD, and Walmart and Amazon, operate some of the most extensive digital ecosystem. And here on this slide, we've identified 4 core pillars of success for their e-commerce and digital ecosystems. One of those is they continue to build these expansive value stacks that extends across multiple industries and businesses, integrating sort of into the consumer's life. And these value stacks drive economies of scale. Another important pillar of success is data. Data is at the heart of what a lot of these e-commerce players do. In fact, Alibaba brands itself a data company. These e-commerce players also capture this data from across the ecosystem and then leverage this data to enhance all their businesses across the different value stacks. Again, data is also a critical revenue stream for them. In terms, you can think about that in terms of marketing, in terms of sort of personalization and product development. And another key area to look for within these is the top marketplaces have their own research and development labs, and teams focus sort of on some of the latest initiatives to drive efficiencies, automation, and overall customer experience. And later, when we start talking about technology and Alexa, we'll delve a little bit into that. And finally, achieving scale is critical to marketplaces, ecosystem growth, and development as sort of it fuels other 3 pillars of success. And technology and software platforms often scale more quickly and are more easily than traditional retail scales. So on that note, before we move on to sort of the steep drivers of change, I wanted to reiterate that subscribers have all of these data and a lot more available to them on our platform. Our customers use it to identify growth opportunities and optimize their own focus as they set market, channel, and customer strategies. We know a lot of you are probably going into your planning process right now and rely on data to guide you. So if this is relevant, please reach out to us. With that said, I'll hand over to my colleague Claire, who will take us through some of the major drivers of change affecting the e-commerce landscape.
Thanks, Usman, and welcome to everyone again. So at Planet Retail RNG, we use our STEEP framework shown on the screen to identify and assess the variables that could impact our future world, with particular emphasis on the retail industry and the consumer. We then group these drivers of change into 5 key areas: society, technology, economy, industry, and policy, to help predict the future retail landscape. For this presentation, we're focusing on the top drivers behind the shift towards e-commerce and drivers that will affect the future progression of the e-commerce market. So starting with society, we're seeing a rise in the number of consumers moving from rural to urban areas across the globe. These congested cities are resulting in a lower vehicle ownership rate that makes it harder for consumers to transport goods back home themselves, which is favoring e-commerce. Consumers are also in closer proximity to each other, so there are more efficient fulfillment routes to the end consumer for online retailers, compared to rural populations that may have consumers miles apart from each other. Also, with consumers leading increasingly busy and fast-paced lifestyles, they're seeking the most convenient and time-efficient ways to shop. E-commerce and its various fulfillment models captures this need and further increases the expectation for immediacy from consumers. Now moving on to technology, AI will be a huge part of the future e-commerce developments. Automation is already being widely used in warehousing to improve efficiencies and decrease labor costs. Autonomous vehicles are also emerging as an e-commerce enabler. Online retailers are also finding new ways to capture, use, and monetize the extensive shopper data collected from online shopping. These will then be used to predict future trends, create curated products in real time, and forecast future demand. A big economical driver is the growth of both the addressable and digitally addressable populations across the globe. Urbanization, infrastructure improvements, and increased internet and mobile access are all contributing to this growth. Consumer demand is also increasing for international products, with online access and improved visibility fueling this demand. Digital marketplaces are more flexible than traditional store-based retailers when it comes to expanding across new borders, and provide both retailers and brands opportunity to enter new markets with relatively low digital and physical investment. Now, those are just a taster of the top drivers that are fueling e-commerce growth. Them and others will continue to shape the e-commerce landscape going forward. We will now move on to talking about some of the key e-commerce topics and challenges that suppliers are facing due to the e-commerce growing rapidly. I will pass back over to Usman, who will talk you through the first two topics, packaging and new technologies.
Thanks, Claire. To start off with, we'd identified all of these topics that are key to sort of the growth of e-commerce and that a lot of suppliers are working towards. So the first one has to do with packaging, and many brands are yet to crack online packaging, and few are excelling in this space. And they are often small niche players. However, even those that are excelling in this space struggle with profitability. And some of the key packaging concerns for shoppers that we're seeing include sort of these four themes of four bucket. One in terms of sustainability, what type of material is the packaging, and just being aware of recyclable packaging and meeting some of those consumer demands. Another one is sort of smart packaging as everything is becoming more automated and we have new technologies like virtual reality, augmented reality. Some of these have been incorporated into packaging to sort of bridge the gap between online and offline and have that seamless and frictionless experience. And we also see increasingly the demand for transparency in sort of clean labels, so sort of transparency about price, where the product is from, the type of information that's on it, and also just the demand for personalization. And we've seen a lot of examples around that. All of these sort of represent an opportunity for brands to innovate and engage better with the consumer. And so sort of we wanted to provide some few best in class. There's some good number of examples out there, but we wanted to focus on two of these examples just to show you how suppliers and retailers are working to overcome some of these different challenges. As we know, online packaging is a key consumer touch point and require an e-commerce first mentality. I think it's very important to think of store-based packaging and online online sort of packaging as two different SKUs rather than lumping them together and having it be one. A good number of brands and retailers are already trialing various concepts to win in this space. On the left, for instance, we see Jet.com's packaging for its uniquely J private brands, which is quite a great packaging in terms of, if you look at its illustration style, creates an experience that definitely breaks away from traditional style of the value-driven private label industry, delivering sort of a shareable moment both online and offline with the illustrations and packaging that tell a story. Again, appealing to sort of social commerce and social sharing and be able to meet some of these new demands of especially millennials. And if we look at its coffee brand in particular, it leverages its packaging design that connects strongly with the product and tells a subtle visual story with the use of sort of region-specific plants, flowers, and traditional pattern textiles. I think what's happening here is a lot of brands, and you see that with Nike too, packaging that does a good job of bridging the relationship between the product and its packaging. And so what we're seeing is packaging is going beyond just the basics functionality, but going on to like tell a story, to engage with the consumer, to provide something a little extra than just the traditional way of packaging. And a well-developed e-commerce packaging plan starts with understanding of the consumer behaviors and trends, with the goal of achieving sort of the benefit of product protection, but also visual appeal and sort of optimization of the packaging for shipping efficiency, which is also a big hurdle when you're trying to ship online packages. And also where understanding the consumer comes into place is high-end shoppers are more likely to respond positively to some of these enhanced packaging. And so some of these things can be costly, and you should be able to understand your demographic and your shopper segmentation to prioritize where to invest in some of these packaging. And when delivered, the product must meet the consumer's expectation, sort of the expectation they form from viewing the product online. And then moving on to technologies, we've seen smart speakers have become the fastest growing consumer tech, surpassing augmented reality, virtual reality, and wearables. And no surprise here, Alexa is at the forefront of smart speaker innovation, but it's still a couple of years out. However, other big brands like Google, Sonos, and Chinese e-commerce giants like Alibaba, JD, are also increasingly investing in voice technology. All of these investment would help sort of fast track the growth of voice adoption. But the challenge for many brands would be around visibility on these platforms, some of which already offer hundreds of SKUs. And the fact that voice technology, unlike sort of a 3P marketplace, often restricts consumer access to pre-selected ranges. Here's a few examples. To win in voice technology in the future, brands must start building their sort of 3 or 4 years Alexa strategy now. It will be important to envision what the voice experience would look like a few years from now, and being able to provide sort of broad experiences that go beyond the product. Keeping in mind with given a tight budget, I think all of that would be key. And one good example of sort of brands already doing this and sort of getting towards that is Diego, for instance, is pushing forward its voice strategy. It recently launched a new skill for the latest Amazon Echo. And what this does is that it helps people make cocktails and drives brand purchasing through Amazon. The skill gives people basically 3 options. People can ask for a recipe and be talked through the preparation. That's one option. Another option is it offers cocktail suggestions based on your preferences. And then finally, the third is it teaches people different mixology techniques. The ingredients, so this is where it's not just awareness, but then connecting to commerce. The ingredients for the cocktails can be saved to shopping lists that are then sent to the Alexa mobile app where the user can buy these ingredients. The skill also gives users the option to purchase certain ingredient and 12 of Diageo's brand, including Smirnoff, by directing them to Amazon. Similarly, we've seen Campbell's Kitchen and Nestle Purina building their Alexa skills as well. Sort of a lot of what we've seen with these skills and these new development are geared, they focus on brand awareness, but they has the potential to build e-commerce sales should the Echo device become ubiquitous in households. And awareness is very important, especially with the restricted SKUs that we've seen. It's important that when customers are using this, they already have awareness of your program and they know your brand and they're requesting exactly your brand. And I think this is a good way for them to start with it. And with that, I'll turn over to my colleague Claire, who will talk us through 1P versus 3P.
Thanks, Usman. So the third topic that we're going to talk through today is whether to sell first or third party. So 3P marketplaces will grow faster than any other business model with a forecasted CAGR of 17% from 2018 through to 2023. And 9 out of the top 10 leading e-commerce players operate a 3P marketplace, with many also selling first party. As shown by this graph, the top online player, which is Alibaba, has 99% of its GMV through 3P sales. And Amazon, the top US online player, has been increasing its 3P sales, with them actually outnumbering first party for the first time in 2017. So retailers are increasingly prioritizing the 3P marketplace business model. This is not only for fast growth, but also it can be extremely profitable at scale, with it being a flexible and asset-light model requiring pretty limited physical infrastructure. The 3P marketplace enables a nearly limitless set of third-party sellers, which expands assortment and hence drives more traffic. So for brands, 1P versus 3P is a very complicated topic with many big considerations. So I thought I'd kind of go into maybe a couple of key considerations today for brands to consider. So on hybrid platforms such as Amazon, 3P sellers can be a huge threat to first-party sellers. Number one, price. 3P sellers can undercut and create a price war, putting pressure on first-party sellers to lower prices and hence margins. Number two, brand equity. Third-party sellers selling counterfeit or damaged products can really damage a brand's reputation, as can bad experiences, including poor fulfillment, returns, and responsiveness to queries. Therefore, it is important for first-party sellers to really monitor and crack down on these third-party sellers. External companies can help identify these 3P sellers and where they're getting their stock from. Reviews can be managed, and also vendor managers utilized to best manage the situation. A second consideration for brands is selling both first-party and third-party on the same site. This requires in-depth financial exercises to ensure it makes sense for a business's financials. As though there are many benefits, there are also many challenges. However, one of the key benefits of a hybrid supply model is creating an in-stock buffer. So inaccurate forecasting and fulfillment center constraints can lead to insufficient inventory to support demand, especially during seasonal peaks. Therefore, listing as a third party can provide backup inventory for first-party sellers to try and avoid out of stocks, which can be key in decreasing sales. The fourth topic that we identified to talk through today is private labels. So a big trend that we're seeing across many of the top e-commerce players is the building out of their private labels. For example, Amazon has more than doubled its number of own brands to over 80 just in the past year. For retailers, it really enables them to fill category gaps and capture big selling categories, as well as undercut other sellers on prices, expand assortment, and create new revenue streams. Retailers will often have strong signposting on their platforms for their own brands with, for example, clickable advertising, noticeable recommendations for consumers, and products appearing high up in search results. So all of these factors are really challenges for suppliers to get customers to purchase their products rather than retailers' own brand. So onto a couple of recommendations. So to not only compete with these private label products, but also other suppliers' products, the fundamentals of search are really key. Demonstrated by this example on the screen from MPOW, who is selling on Amazon.com. Really including key search terms in titles and descriptions will help boost products up the search results page. This is really important for online, as 70% of users do not go past the first results page and 35% click the first item. Equally, using engaging hero images is key to really catch consumers' attention and is really especially important for small mobile screens with high scrolling rates. And mobile is really becoming a key part of shopping online. Another solution is unique products and SKUs that really capture specific consumer need and increase the convenience for consumers. This will really help boost sales and attract consumers to your products. So here we show one of the top selling coffee products on Amazon, which is an espresso variety pack. And this is actually sold by a 3P seller who has identified the need from consumers for a combination of coffee flavors in just one order. and they've really benefited in sales from this. And you can see from the amount of reviews and the rating that it's really valued by customers. So the final topic we want to talk through today is profitability. And this is really one of the biggest, if not the biggest, challenge for online businesses. And although pure play retailers, they don't have outlet costs that store-based retailers do, they really do have significant shipping, labor, technology, warehousing, and also future investments, which are cutting into margins and really challenging the profitability of online business models. With consumer expectations for fast delivery and at low or no extra costs increasing, these fulfillment supply chain costs are just going to continue to rise. And demonstrated by the graph you can see on the screen, Amazon's fulfillment costs have increased from just 9% of overall sales to 20% over the past 10 years. This really shows how they've been expanding their geographical reach and speeding up their fulfillment have led to these costs. So if one of the leading online retailers that's a leader in innovation is really struggling with fulfillment costs, then this is definitely indicative of a wider trend. So the next slide I just put in to show how extensive Amazon's digital ecosystem is. Usman mentioned the concept of an ecosystem earlier, and this is our framework that we've developed at Planet Retail R&G. And it shows how online retailers are building out their businesses beyond just commerce to new industries. It creates a captive network that really boosts consumer engagement, increases wallet share and time spent on the platform. And really most relevant for profitability, what we're talking about is it creates new revenue streams. And these additional revenue streams help offset these fulfillment costs and generate capital that can be invested in future-focused supply chain research. So just moving on to a couple of recommendations and case studies. So as retailers are feeling more pressure from these fulfillment costs, they're shifting a lot of this pressure onto suppliers to take control of some of the supply chain and fulfillment costs. And a solution that is commonly being seen across the globe is logistics partnerships between retailers and suppliers. And one such example that we've identified is Danone in China, and they've partnered with JD.com, the second largest online player in China, for a shared warehouse that really merges Danone's online and offline operations. Through this, Danone gains access to JD's in-house logistics network and supply chain management technology, with the aim, so they will be aiming to improve their demand planning, warehousing, inventory management, and transportation to consumer. So that's one example. And another example that we're seeing a lot of as well is multi-packs and bundling, as shipping one low-price product is far less efficient and profitable than shipping many products that have a higher combined total. So Amazon, for example, has been cracking down on this issue, adding many more products to its add-on only shopping option, so they cannot be bought alone. Multi-packs and bundling complementary products into packages really increases the margin of shipping low-cost items and can equally provide a more convenient and tailored product to the consumer if executed well. So we've covered some tangible examples of the requirements to build and optimize a successful e-commerce business. And it's really just an example of some of the challenge we focus on at Planet Retail R&G. So if you're working through any of these issues or others that we haven't mentioned today, we have research and case studies to support that process. We also have a dedicated advisory team that can help you through the unique challenges of your business. And currently we're advising some of the biggest retailers and brands around the world on these exact challenges. So quick summary of today. Just before we move on to questions, which feel free to still submit in the GoToWebinar panel. A quick summary. So we started with Planet Retail R&G data, really demonstrating how e-commerce is driving the majority of chain retail sales growth over the next 5 years. This has been driven by societal, technological, economical, and industrial drivers, and these will continue to shape the e-commerce landscape. The rise of e-commerce is disrupting the retail landscape and driving the need for new capabilities by both retailers and suppliers. And in order to win in the e-commerce market, both retailers and suppliers must respond to this disruption in a number of different ways, with many best-in-class examples covered in today's presentation. So now you can see how you would start to think about an e-commerce strategy for your business. If you would like our experts here at Planet Retail R&G to help you with building your e-commerce vision and strategy, brand go-to-market plan, or whether you need to investigate a joint business plan, please do not hesitate to reach out. And it's the email, which is info@planetretail.net. So now we're going to have a look and see if we have any questions. If we don't get around to answering your question today, we will be emailing you a response as soon as we can. So we've got a question here about personalization and its effects on e-commerce. So yeah, personalization is a really huge opportunity for both retailers and suppliers in e-commerce, especially with consumer demand for personalization and customizable products really increasing. And I suppose stores really have a limited of personalization due to stock being on shelves and pre-packaged, and it not really being viable to have the facilities in store to personalize products. However, ordering online, it's coming from warehouses in a lot of cases, and there's an opportunity for brands to create bespoke products and packages and then ship them direct to consumer. A requirement of this is really real-time manufacturing. That's really key to be able to keep up with this demand, and it will be a new capability for a lot of brands. However, especially in, I would say, kind of apparel, it's becoming really big personalization, and it can really distinguish a brand from its competitors. And then I think we've got time for one more question. So Usman, there's a question on, so which global markets do you consider will be the fastest growing over the next 5 years?
Thanks, Claire. I think with the chart I showed earlier, China, of course, is expected to grow the fastest. India is also right around there. Not a lot of big difference in terms of growth in the next 5 years. And there's a couple of reasons why this is the case. Just one, the size of the Chinese market, but also there's a lot of opportunity. If you look at as internet penetration grows in China, there's a lot of opportunities for these marketplaces to be able to attract more consumers. One thing that we've been seeing is the biggest players like Alibaba and JD have been increasingly sort of moving towards the Chinese rural market, which is around 600 or so million people, and a lot of those are newly coming online and being engaged in e-commerce, and so that's a massive opportunity there. Also, I think one big difference is the fact that unlike some of like the US, some of these Western market where they first had a very established brick and mortar retail, China didn't necessarily have that. So we're seeing in a lot of ways, we're seeing chain retail sales growing alongside e-commerce. And so these are e-commerce first market who are driving a lot of the innovation and are solving for some of the fulfillment requirement Claire talked about earlier, and also just introducing new form of shopping. We've also seen some of their shoppers are very unique, and that's driving some of their personalization and engagement. So definitely these are market to look forward to. I mean, as we've seen with Pinduoduo, which literally didn't exist 3 years ago and really targeted shoppers in their 30s who are in China's rural cities, mostly their tier 3 and tier 4, have been able to grow in less than 3 years to become one of the top 5. So there's still a lot of potential and opportunities in that market.
So I think that's all the questions we have time for today. Any that we haven't got around to answering, as I said before, we will be getting back to you via email. So thank you everyone for joining today's session. Again, if you have any questions, please email info@planetretail.net. Thank you again, everyone.